Welcome back to Get Corporate Ready, and in this video, as promised, what I'm going to be doing is using it to really go through some of the key interview questions that all of you have asked me on my Instagram and on my LinkedIn page, and really just go through some of the key questions that are maybe a little bit more nuanced in the sense that it's not part of the standard ones that people would ask, and try and help you answer it. Hey guys, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Bohlale Paile. I'm a young talent specialist and really use this platform to give advice and tips to all graduates and young professionals alike around how to get corporate ready. Now, if you're the kind of candidate that wants to stand out, that wants to start their career with a level of confidence, make sure that you're giving me a like and you're hitting that subscribe button and the notifications bell so that you never miss a video that's really just going to help you elevate in your corporate career. Stick around with me through this video. These are the key questions that I'll be answering, and in this particular order. So what is your 5-year plan, right? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? This is something that can be quite a common question as well. And in order to prepare for this question, it's important for you to have asked yourself that, right, before you go into an interview. To say to yourself, well, this is where I'm currently starting. My 5-year plan, where do I want to see myself in 5 years, right? And you almost need to look at it from a place of, does my career have set roles and set levels that I can go into? So for instance, if you're in the legal industry, you know that as you start off as a candidate attorney, you're then moving into being an associate, you're moving into being a senior associate, and you know typically it takes maybe 3 years as an associate, 3 years as a senior associate, 4 years, somewhere there. And so in your mind, when you're applying for a candidate attorney position, you almost say to yourself, okay, so I'm going to be a candidate attorney for 2 years, right? And then after that is the associate position, which typically takes maybe 3 years in most places. So 5 years from where I am now, what does that look like, right? So then you are able to say, well, in 5 years' time, I really hope that I'm up for being a senior associate, or I've made enough progress to become a senior associate within the company, if that's where you want to go, right? But if you're using the company as a stepping stone to gain particular skills to then become something else, what is that something else? Ask yourself that. And that's why it's so important that as you start your career, have goals for yourself. If you don't have goals for yourself, it makes it difficult for you to understand how to answer this particular question. So as you go in for a role, ask yourself the first question, right? How long do I see myself doing this particular role, right? Set it in your head, 2 years, 3 years doing this role, great. What am I going to gain in 3 years? What do I want to gain? What skills do I want to gain in 3 years? So that as you are working in it, you then know what type of skills you should be making sure that you are getting a lot of exposure to, so that it's setting yourself up, right? And once you know that you are in a particular career for this many years, and these are the set skills that I want to gain, understand why you want to do all of that. And that's what will give you your answer about where you want to be in the next 5 years. So it's almost about looking past the role that you're applying for and seeing, what is that next for me? After this role, what do I want to do? Once you know what this is and the skill sets that you need to gain, you go back into this. And that's how you're going to map out, these are the skills I need to gain to become this person here, right? And so always make sure that you go into an interview already having assessed, what career path am I in? What do I want to do with this role? And what do I want to become after this role? And how does that link, right? And what kind of skills do I need to be gaining? So when you answer the question, you're not saying, in 5 years' time, I want to be a senior associate. Great, right? You almost need to be like, well, in 5 years' time, I'm really hoping that I've done enough as a candidate attorney, have been retained in this particular company, and have really learned a lot within my years as an associate. I hope at that time that I've sharpened my legal skills. I hope at that time that my drafting ability has really gone to a point where I can really start doing a lot more substantive work, because ultimately where I want to be is that I want to become a thriving senior associate that's already starting to build their practice, that's already starting to gain their own clients, so that as I work through that into becoming a partner, I'm setting myself up by having those right steps, right? So when you answer the question, answer it fully. answer it from a point of, this is where I want to be, this is how I plan to get there, this is why I want to be there as well. And then that, I think, is going to be the perfect answer for where do you see yourself in 5 years' time. So one of the questions was, does stammering and mixing up your words, does it put you at a disadvantage, right? So I think it depends here. If you stammer or you stutter, and that's something that you have inherently, right, and you do that irrespective, it's not just about the nerves of an interview, then if you do that, no, I think people will be patient enough to be able to really get the gist of what you are saying. So it's less about the fact that you are stammering and stuttering, but it's really about understanding what point are you trying to put across. And so if you do have that problem where you stutter quite a bit, I think it's important for you to make sure that whatever point you're trying to make, you've kept it short and succinct, right? You don't want to be telling a long story and then stammering through it, because then that's going to lose the audience at some point in time. So it's important, I think, that if you do have a bit of a problem with stammering or stuttering, and maybe the trigger is your nerves, right? Maybe it's because you are feeling a bit nervous. Make sure that you are answering the question, right? So as you take your time through answering the question, make sure that you get to the point so that immediately your recruiter knows exactly what the answer is for that particular question. But if you are stammering and mixing up your words because of nerves, it means you haven't prepared enough, right? I really believe that preparation helps you calm your nerves in any interview, right? The first question or two, you may still be a bit nervous, but as you get into your groove, you're able to just calm down a bit, right? So make sure that you've prepared ahead of your interview. Make sure you've watched all of my videos to make sure that you know how to tackle different questions and different scenarios. And make sure that when you go in there, you feel confident in how much you've prepared. And even if you get a question that maybe you haven't prepared for, think about it. Take a second or two to just say, okay, so this is what they're asking me. What is my actual answer? And then go into it and start answering it, right? So be prepared for your interview so that it helps you just be a lot more free-flowing as you go through it. Those of you that are stammering and stuttering and mixing up your words because of nerves and you haven't prepared, yes, it's going to be a disadvantage because you'll never get to the point where you are answering the question. And it's important for you to answer the question, right? So it only becomes a problem if you don't get to answering the question and we can see that you just have not prepared. One of the key questions that I do get asked quite a bit is how to respond to the question, what are your salary expectations? So this one can be a little bit tricky because it really depends on what level you're at within your current career, what you are currently earning, and what's the realistic jump that you expect to really jump into. And that's work that you are going to have to do for yourself, right? So you look at what you're currently earning, you maybe top it up by 10, 15% and say that that is your salary expectation. But what you expect from a salary perspective really needs to be aligned for the role that you are going into, right? So as you interview for that role, understand where you're at, what you are paid, but what is the gap in terms of learning to the role that you are applying to, right? And so you need to be realistic within that to say, well, I'm applying to this role, I know 80% of the work, so I think it is realistic for me to maybe gun for the 10% or the 15%. But if there's a huge gap and you're someone that's coming from university into a grad program, a lot of grad programs don't ask you what you want to earn. There's a set salary for graduates that are coming into the workspace, right? So, and that is based because no one has the experience. You're all starting from ground zero. And so because of that, they don't ask you what your salary expectations necessarily are. So this question is predominantly for people that have worked a couple of years already, and you really just want to make it market related, right? You want to be able to do a little bit of research to see people within my bracket, within this particular career, what is the average salary that people are actually earning, right? So do a bit of that research, look at where you're at, see what a 10 or 15% markup looks like according to the average, the industry average. And you really just need to go into Google, guys. Go into Google and search there, marketing assistant salary range, There'll be a couple of articles that you can go through and do a bit of a comparison in terms of what they are saying, where you are at, and where this next role is going to then take you. Social media handles, whether they positively or negatively affect your application? So this is a very important question. I think a lot of times you do hear that certain recruiters will look through your social media platforms and get a sense of who you are as a person before deciding whether they want to bring you on board or not. And I think a lot of recruiters actually don't do that as extensively as you may think, right? Recruiting is something that tends to be quite high volume. We want to focus attention on your CV and all the different documentations that you've put through. So still spending time going through social media platforms is not always something that we do, to be honest with you. I think people that do that is maybe for quite senior positions where you really want to get a holistic feel of a person, because they're going to come into a very high senior position and you want to make sure that you've checked all the different aspects of that person before you hire them. But for graduates that are coming into grad programs or young professionals that have been working between 2 to 5 years, no, I don't think a lot of people look through it. And if they do look through it and see an image of a person that they don't particularly like, but on paper you're really great, I think you may still stand a chance of being interviewed. So I think it depends. It depends on the role. And it depends on the amount of time the recruiter actually has to be going through your social media. But I think for those of you that have a LinkedIn profile, make sure that you have a platform that you keep as professional as possible. Like I said in my LinkedIn video, don't spend too much time on your LinkedIn profile making it a social platform, right? So stick to that. But on your social ones, I think recruiters have a sense of, well, it's their social life. We cannot prejudice someone because this is what they choose to do outside of their work, right? But make sure that on the one that matters, that is kept clean and to the point. A lot of times, if you are seeing different people, you're going to expect some of the same questions, right? So a lot of the basic questions that you get in your first round of interviews, by the time you go into your second, it's predominantly going to be some of the same, but a little bit more technical. So what I've found is that a lot of times your first round of interviews is with the recruiters, with HR, and they'll be asking really basic questions around who you are, personal profile, what you've put in your CV, why do you want the job, what makes you stand out. So we'll ask you a lot of those questions. And if we feel that you fit the culture, you fit the profile of the type of role that we are looking for, and you go into the second round, in the second round, you typically then are meeting with experts in that space. So whether it's teammates, whether it's your actual boss that's interviewing you, you get to meet with those people, and what they will typically ask you are questions that are more directed at the role itself and all the technical aspects of the role. So it's important for you to, for your second interview, really know the job spec inside out, really know where your strengths are, where your development areas are, so that as they ask you different things about the actual role, you're able to answer from the point of actually understanding what you've applied to. So go into it from that perspective. But what I'm saying is that typically there'll be a mixture of all those types of questions, both personal and technical, in all the rounds. It just depends on who you're meeting. So make sure before you go for each round that you're going for, read up about who the interviewer is, understand what level they're at in the company, and almost prepare for that kind of questions. So someone more senior will definitely not spend too much time asking you about all the small details of the role. They may ask you, how do you see your role fitting into the company? How do you see yourself affecting change in the role that you are applying for? What are some of the key things that you think in your role are important for a company like ours to always be aware of, right? So they'll ask you things that are a lot bigger focused, right? It's not about the detail. So always make sure as you go for different rounds, ask who you are interviewing with if they haven't told you. And if they have told you, make sure that you're going onto LinkedIn, you're checking who they are, what level they're at in the company, so that you then set your frame of mind to answering a particular set of questions. Thank you guys. I hope that this video really helped address a lot of the questions that were asked with regards to interviewing and how to get ready from an interview perspective. Do make sure that you're giving me comments below if I have answered your question, and if you found a lot of value in those questions. Any other question that I may not have addressed, please do put in the comments below and I'll make sure to come back to it.